Hey, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to do something a little different. My name is Russell. RL are my initials. I'm the author of Hocus Focus, Coming of Age with ADD and its Medicines. And today I'm going to do something a little different and talk about ADHD medications, specifically my journey with ADHD medications. You may follow my channel and see the weird stuff I do and all the fun we have. But a lot of times I talk about quitting ADHD medications, moving on from them, but I realized that I haven't really delivered the testimony of my experience. And I think a lot of people, they come on YouTube and they want to hear stories people have of their experiences with these medications. So I'm going to share mine with you today. So it all started one day when I was 7 years old in second grade. We're sitting at our quadrant tables. You know, you have these tables where you have someone to your right, someone to your left, someone to your diagonal. Someone to your right, someone in front of you, someone diagonal. And we're doing dittos. And dittos, if you're a millennial like me, dittos are, you know what they are. It was worksheets, the Xerox copies, they warm, they smell good. And a lot of times it would be like a spelling piece of paper with like a missing letter and a little B on top that said like, be productive, or you know, they were fun, right? Just busy work that we were given to do. That also was related to our academic studies. And one afternoon I was doing these works, and I had a tendency to finish work and chat and get around, but I was academic, I was excited. And I was also a late birthday, so I was developmentally a year younger than some of my peers. But nonetheless, so this boy across from me, Jeffrey Robinson, he had his triangular prism triangle name tag that he had constructed, you know, for his own name, and he pushed it onto my desk, pushing my name tag out of its place. And I was kind of like doing my work, like, okay, you know, whatever, and pushed it back. And then, get back to work. And then Jeffrey once again did it again. And this is going to get to medication. Just stick with me. And then I pushed it back, and then I got agitated. And I said, Jeffrey, you got to stop this, you know. however a 7-year-old might display that, I got frustrated. The teacher came over, and her perception of the situation was simplified into Russell is distracted by this boy's name tag when he should be doing his work. You know, I may have tried to justify myself, but it was too late. I was agitated, Jeffrey was calm. And I remember this story because soon after that, I was sent to be evaluated for a learning disability in terms of attention. And I was trying to figure out why. What did I do? Where did this come from? And I was like, oh, that thing the other day with Jeffrey. So I repeated this story my whole life as the primer, the harbinger, into what turned out to be a long relationship, a long journey with amphetamines, because I was then promptly evaluated by a group of women. No shade on that. I just remember that there were no men at this facility, and they maybe as a young boy I didn't relate to them or something, and I don't know why. I remember that, you know, no shade on like women or anything, but they were all women. And they wrote up a report. The tests, they did two and a half days maybe of different testing. I'd go into the facility, go to the waiting room, get called back in, be in a room with a woman I never met before, and it was a series of different people who would do tests. Mainly I had one main proctor who gave me tests like tangrams, drawing, writing, speech, spelling, sentence structure, reading comprehension. And the test I did really poorly on was audio. I had headphones in, and they put me in a sound booth, and then they'd be in another room, and they would read like part of words and sentences or something, and I'd have to figure out what was missing. So they'd be like, elephant. You'd be like, what? You'd be like, elephant. You'd be like, elephant? You know, that was kind of the test. But I also had chronic ear infections. I had the tubes in my ears, like that thing where you have to get the tubes. I had my adenoids removed. You know, I was some of these weird structural things going on, and I may have had auditory processing issues. But in the report that they delivered in their evaluation, they did attribute this to attention. And the other test that I also bombed after, I did great on other tests, but I bombed, it was called the Connors Continuous Performance Test. And this is a test where you sit at a computer and you like, if a certain symbol comes up, you push space bar. If another, you don't. I think it was an X or something. But I didn't even get the instructions then, and I was too nervous to ask for them to be repeated. So when they left the room, I didn't know what to do. I thought I would figure it out, but the rules were completely arbitrary. They were impossible to figure out on your own because there was no feedback of any kind. So I just started slamming the space bar, and I didn't realize that this action, and I was in a room with other members of the staff, I remember, and they were talking, and I was listening to their conversation. So busted, distracted. You're listening to the conversation. You're not doing this silly computer test. You're broken. That was what it was. And so yeah, that using those two tests and whatever else they needed to, they diagnosed me with ADD and recommended that I go to see a psychiatrist. And here's where the biggest damage was done, because I may say this, that, and the other thing. From medications hurt me, sure. Maybe taking all those amphetamines had an effect. But the damage to my self-esteem when I was 7 years old, of being told I had a learning disability when I wasn't struggling and I wasn't asking for help and I didn't feel that way, was very damaging and hard to become, because from that point on, I had a certain self-awareness or self-consciousness that even though, the sun's coming out, that even though I feel like I know who I am and I feel like I am smart and I'm capable and I'm eager to learn, that according to my authority structure, according to the people who know better than me, I'm wrong. So it birthed this really damaging, thought pattern that from then on I was like, well, I don't really know. Even if I feel smart, I might be wrong, because I did feel smart and I was told I wasn't smart. But it didn't matter. From then on, learning disabled, let's go. So I went into a psychiatrist's office, and he had very squeaky shoes. Distracted, squeaky shoes. Maybe he had squeaky shoes on purpose to see if anyone was like, I can't do anything because of your squeaky shoes, because we live in a squeaky world and you have to be able to work with people who have squeaky shoes. But anyways, his squeaky shoes were distracting, I'll be honest. And he had me do sort of similar tests. He just spent time with me. I think he was making sure that, there wasn't more he could medicate me for, because he's a psychiatrist, not a psychologist. And, he did offer sleeping medication as well, but we didn't take that. So he offered me Dexedrine. And I remember in his office the moment, too, where he was, like, busted. He was having me mimic certain things, like throwing a ball, brushing my teeth. And he had me mimic playing baseball, holding up a bat. And he had a tin of hard pretzels, which were and still are one of my favorite snacks. And he had told me earlier that, help yourself. Anytime you want a pretzel, just have a pretzel. And I remember he was saying, do this, do that, brush your teeth, swing a baseball bat. And in between, when I had some time while he was assigning the next thing, I went over and grabbed a pretzel. He was like, oh, I didn't say grab a pretzel. And I could see it in his mind, like, check, ADD. So 7 years old, they give me Dexedrine. I was taking, that's an amphetamine. I was taking about 10 to 15 milligrams a day of amphetamine. And, I didn't like it at the time. I really didn't like being on these meds. I guess it solved the problem of me being annoying, of me being talking too much, me being jumpy, me getting out of my seat. I did what I was told. I think my grades were the same. I had A's and B's before this diagnosis, and I continue to have A's and B's. I think just my behavior was more satisfactory to my teachers, so they were like, all right. I didn't eat much during the day, and I would binge eat in the afternoon. I would nap. It made me a little less social, a little more dangerously introspective at times. I had thoughts of like hurting myself as a young age, these things that, and with a young child, I would never say like, hey, I didn't have the wherewithal to say like, hey, I think these medications are making me sad. I didn't know how to express these feelings, so I just bottled them up. I started writing in journals, and I used those to write my book, Hocus Focus, as a reference. And the other day I burned them all, which was cool. It was cathartic. But so yeah, I was a little bit distant. I still liked to play, and on the medications, yeah, they made me depressed when I was young, I think. because I can't think of what else would make me depressed. But I was experiencing that, and when you're taking the medications and they wear off in the afternoon, you go through a withdrawal every afternoon. It's like it's like you're Prometheus, and every day the bird eats your liver. It's like every day you withdraw if you take drugs in the morning, but don't that cause a withdrawal. But then when I was in 6th or 7th grade, my psychiatrist, he retired, and I was like, you know what? No, Mom, I'm not taking drugs anymore. Deal with it. And she was like, well, okay. Well, then we'll give you a tutor. And I had a tutor, and I was fine. And, I had this big rebound effect in my personality. I started being really outgoing. I joined, like, theater clubs. I was doing all kinds of stuff. I'd go up to people and, like, talk to them randomly. I was very, like, I wanted attention. That was the real deficit of attention, was no one was paying it to me, and I wanted it. So I was going out and satisfying my need for attention through just being a goofball. And I didn't care about school. My grades did decline. I kind of went from an A-B student to a C student sometimes. And it wasn't because, the ADD was true. It wasn't because I was cognitively unable to understand these concepts. It was because I wasn't motivated to do the work. And that's a complicated issue that I think goes beyond attention. I think, at least in my case, the pressure of doing it for other people, I was stubborn about it. I was like, if I'm getting good grades, I'll do it for myself, not for you. And there are things I want to do, and I don't want to perform for you. And that's an issue for sure. That could have been handled with, I don't know, like therapy or something like that. Certainly other ways. The medication did make me just do the work because it was then pleasurable. Then I'm getting rushes of dopamine doing whatever, so I'll do whatever. But, so moving on. When the medication stopped, I gained weight and I was goofy. And then in freshman year of high school, I started working out a lot. And I was doing pretty good. I started getting in good shape. I started exercising, and the exercise gave me energy, and I felt clear, and I felt pretty good. And I started skateboarding, which gave me something to focus on. I would skateboard till the sun went down, just focused on that, and I could. But something in me, I had a rebellious spirit. Freshman year of high school, I had like a 3.6, 3.7 yearly grade point average, which is pretty good. And then sophomore year, I tanked it. I had this whole, I kind of went hedonist, nihilist. I want to be in the moment. I was some kind of personal development where I was like, I don't care about grades. So I got a 2.0 average because I just didn't care. I'd participate in classroom instruction, but I was so in the present moment that, and because I didn't feel like I could take ownership for my grades or something, I didn't do well. And if anyone's in high school, I think, it's an opportunity to see if you can work hard. It's an opportunity to train yourself to work hard. It's an opportunity it's the only chance you get to do high school. So it'd be kind of cool to get good grades just because you won't be able to do it again. And if you can train yourself at that time to get good grades, then you can give yourself a certain acuity and productivity that you can carry with you your whole life. But no one really explained that to me, and if they did, I wasn't willing to listen. So I have teachers all the time would have this conversation with me, like, look, you're a smart guy. Just do the work, man. There's so much opportunity for you. And I was like, yeah, you're a teacher. I don't want to be a loser like you. And, I how'd that work out? But the point I'm making is that it was very hard to get that through to my head. And also I had already bounced from the meds and from off. When you take these meds, you're sort of forever living in the context of the meds therein after. Everything that you experience after the medication, you experience in the context of medication. So it's like before medication, there's one consciousness. It may have challenges, but you deal with them. But then you sort of eat the fruit, and now you know something else. So that now there's that other. So even if you don't take medications, well, you live as a sober person, but you weren't sober before because you were sober from what? Does it make sense? I don't know. But my mom wasn't pleased with those grades, and it's like it was all fun and games till you have to bring your report card home. and there was a lot of pressure to go to college. There was a lot of pressure to do well on the SAT test. And, I came from a culture, let's be honest, it was kind of middle to upper middle class folks who typically would go to college and get a good 6-figure job and that kind of thing like that. So the pressure of my peer group was, this is what you do. You do well in school. Your parents can brag about you. They of course they're going to be proud of you. But we want to create the kind of person who is a successful individual, a doctor, a lawyer, an architect, something, You can't just goof around. That's not good. It's true. But it couldn't get through to me. All I wanted to do was skateboard, play guitar, talk to girls and stuff. And, because those were the metrics I was using to judge my success, and I was successful. So, nonetheless, I was forced to get reevaluated. And, it's kind of like, if you get reevaluated and you don't have ADD, you don't have to take medication. How about that, So I go to get reevaluated, and I was such a stubborn little shit during this evaluation. I was doing these tests for these people at the evaluation center. It's interesting. It was also, it was like a group of women, and then the psychiatrist was always a man. But doesn't matter. So they were doing the test for me, and sometimes I remember I had this memory, I was doing the test, and I did them really well. And then you want to do another? I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. How about that? And they weren't like, wow, so edgy. This guy's crazy. They were just like, okay, you definitely have ADHD. You won't even do it. It's so simple. You're not even doing it. So of course you have this problem. And I remember I started like crying when they brought out a Rorschach test, because I was like, what do you think I am? I'm not crazy. I'm just not getting, I have bad grades. I just don't have good grades. And you're busting out Rorschach tests to see what's wrong with me for not having good grades in school. That was my mind. But everyone wanted the best for me. They all wanted me to do well. I just didn't like their methods. I didn't feel like I was being heard or understood. I felt like I was being treated like a big old problem. And I wasn't unhappy, and I think there was a lack of communication, and I didn't feel like I was being heard, but I didn't really know what I was saying. I didn't know how to articulate myself. So it was a very tricky place, and I was really angsty. Nonetheless, same story. They always said I had spots of ADD, inattentive, like, oh, if you like something, you can focus on it. And that was evident with my guitar playing, my skateboarding. I read books. I was interested in stuff. I just had this counter will force that made me uninterested in school and things like that, which is a problem. So they put me on Adderall. I met with a psychiatrist who was weird too. He was a weird dude. And me and my mom were in there together, and I remember I was 15, and I had smoked pot a few times with my friends, and he had said, okay, Russell, and my mom's right there. He's like, do you smoke marijuana? And I was like, oh my God, I haven't talked to my mom about this. I don't want to talk to my mom about this like this, dude. And I remember I just balled up. I had my hoodie on, and I pulled it shut, and I pulled my knees to my chest in this little comfy chair, and I was out. I was like, this is humiliating, and I hate this, and I don't trust you. I don't trust anyone. I don't want to be here. And I just balled up. I started crying. And this like mental health professional who sees this 15-year-old boy shutting down just turns to my mom. And I remember, I had my eyes closed. I couldn't see anything. He's like, well, do you think he smoked pot? I'm like, damn, this guy's an asshole. And then she was like, oh, I don't know. She was caught off guard too. It was weird. But anyways, he was like, well, if you smoke pot, these drugs aren't any good. And I was like, we'll see about that. But, we'll get along the story here, because this is a long journey. So, I had already had second, third, fourth, fifth, 5 years of amphetamine use under my belt. And then I had, like 3 or 4 years of a pause. And he gave me Adderall. He's like, you can try out Adderall, you can try out Ritalin, try out different doses and see what works. He just like, go for it, see how you feel, and report back. And I remember it was on a Sunday, like the day before Monday, before school. And I took an Adderall, and I went out from my regular skateboarding routine, and I was on fire. It was like, normally I could, in my head, visualize a trick, and then I would do the trick and fumble and be like, why can't I just, where's the separation between my mind and my body? And on the Adderall, that first day of skateboarding, no separation. If I could think it, I could do it. I knew what my body had to do. I was in full communication with my body. I told my body to do it, and it was done. And it felt so good. It was nearly orgasmic to skateboard on Adderall. It was like whatever. It was awesome. There's no other way to put it. And like, it just felt good. And I felt in control. And I felt satisfied. And I had it in my head that this is who I've always wished I was. This is who I always imagined myself to be. This is how I want to be. And something in me was keeping me from accessing this version of myself. And this is the, now I look back on it, and was that a delusion? Because it wasn't the truth. Is this the most dangerous part of this medication? Is that when I take it, it's like, wow, this is me. Not the version of me I got was flawed, and now I am complete. So I went with that, and I went to school, and I remember I was in because I had bad grades up until this point because I didn't give a dang about school. I remember I was in on-level chemistry. All my peers were in honors chemistry. In the previous year, I was in honors biology, was it, or matter and energy? Science. And I was in on-level chemistry and the difference is, when you're in on-level and not, is it's really motivation. The people in the honors are working to get a good grade. The people in the on-level, we're just cruising through this class. But all of a sudden, I remember I was in there and we were balancing valence equations, and I was just on it. And I was just on fire. I was like, this makes sense. The world makes sense. The way chemistry works makes sense. It all makes sense. And better living through chemistry. Everything is on. And I remember in that first week, I was ripping through these equations like none other. And the teacher, she was answering. I raised my question. I was like, I raised my hand. I was like, I know all this. We're good. What do you want? I got the answers. And my teacher, like, not in a mean way, was like, do you want to teach the class? I was like, yeah. And I came up to the overhead projector and I started balancing equations for the classmates. It was like flowers for Algernon kind of moments where I was just flowing. And I was like, wow, this medication is awesome. And I took the SAT test and I broke my finger. So I had a cast, and I did poorly on the SAT test. Or I did decently, but I did better on a practice test, which is funny. But the skateboarding was on fire. And I started driving really fast because it was like the challenge of being on these medications, or what these meds did in my mind. It was like surgical with driving, surgical with everything. It gave me this certain desire to be surgical, or precise, on point, laser-like focus. The sleep was affected. I was staying up late, and I had worked a job, I had a car, I had my own money. So I remember I went to CVS and I bought like NyQuil. I think maybe I'd had it when I was sick, but I didn't realize that I was self-medicating with NyQuil. I would take like a swig of NyQuil every night to take off the edge from the Adderall. And that worked for a while. And I took it, and it didn't really, I felt like my personality was intact. I skipped lunch again, and I would eat when I got home. And I remember, I would be skinny, and I kind of liked the skinny physique, and I didn't really know it was attributed to the Adderall. But in a way, Adderall has a way of subtly introducing eating disorders, because it does make it's an anorexiant. It had been used as an appetite suppressant. So, yeah, you lose weight on Adderall typically, and you gain it when you get off. So as I went on the journey, I went to college, I continued taking Adderall, and I continued studying skateboarding. I remember the difference, if I went out skateboarding, not on Adderall, I'd just have a good time. I cruise. I might try to get a trick over and over and over, and then I would get the trick and be like, yay, I got the trick. But on Adderall, I would land the trick and be like, okay, can I do it better? And I would be like, okay, can I do it better? Okay, can I do it 5 times in a row? Can I do it and then snap my finger? I would, and that's practice, which is great. It's good to practice, but I didn't know how to practice and drill without this medication. And it can be learned. You can learn how to have this kind of discipline. Anyways, I just didn't have it innately. I hadn't developed it. And for so much of my life, I leaned on medication for this kind of approach. And it was hard because maybe it's not my personality, but I started developing sort of 2 personalities. And I dropped out, went back. I had some sort of life stuff that went on. I got arrested for possession of marijuana. I was a waiter at the time, not taking Adderall. I wasn't doing well. So I went to film school, and I got back on Adderall. And I remember I was with film and editing and making video. I was really on point on Adderall, but nobody wanted to work with me because I was kind of socially weird. Being on Adderall made me less apt to participate in social situations. Like, why would I talk to you? There's things to do. What is this conversation really doing? We're just chatting. It's a stupid conversation. And I started becoming, entering the congregation of worshiping logic and reason as the end-all be-all thing. Like, what are we doing if not explaining things and analyzing things? What else is there other than to understand, know, and talk? And so I think in a way, for me, Adderall diminished the essence, the spirit, the soul of some things, because it made me boil it down to its rational, logical base without thinking about the human, the emotional, the what was beyond explanation. It put all my energy in my brain and kind of made my heart quiet. Although at times massively passionate. I could, if I was in a group of people, like at a party, I could dance, I could perform, and I could hold court and talk in an engaging and fun way. But then if I was on a date or something with somebody, I wasn't able to connect. But and I sort of was subtly aware of that. So I kind of made sure to take Adderall for school and have it worn off at the end when I would be social. And it's like it kind of wore off. I was tired, and that made me able to connect with people. And it's like, you can't have everything. You can't. Period. In anything, you can't. You always, if you have something, you have to give something to get something. And I think in order to get what Adderall gives you, you have to give something. It's different for everyone. For me, it was that ability to connect. And who knows what it does to our bodies physiologically, psychologically, over long periods of time. But I know for me, it did some things. Because when I graduated college, I had the idea of biking across the country. And I outlined and prepared this whole journey on Adderall. And, I planned it. And then I stopped taking Adderall and I did this bike trip where I was going to interview everyone and make this whole crazy documentary, right? But I did it off Adderall. And off Adderall, I just wanted to bike. I just wanted to be there. I just wanted to experience it. I just wanted to be present. But I know the Adderall version of myself made an assignment that I had to fulfill. So I had to force myself to talk to people. And that was good. I actually liked that. I learned a lot by talking to as many people as I could while biking across the country. It was a personal experience that was phenomenal. It wasn't part of my ADHD med journey because, hey, I wasn't on meds at the time. It was just me, and I liked that. But when I finished the bike trip, I wanted to make the film. And I got back on Adderall and isolated myself at a cabin in the woods to edit the film. And the Adderall version of myself was like, oh my God, what have you done? You have separate audio and you didn't even sync it. You had no slate. This is a mess, because producing a film from a bicycle is very challenging. I did my best, and I have a lot of really interesting footage, but I was overwhelmed and I was scared. And at this point, I sort of did introduce I blurred the lines on Adderall as terms of what was constituted as needed. I might take an Adderall in the morning, my suggested dose. I might take the bumper in the afternoon, was like a suggested dose. But then if it was like 11 at night and I wanted to keep going, I might say, well, this is needed. This is my new as needed, right? Can this be as needed? I started going a little off script, and I developed a different relationship with the medication. And it took me in some dark places of, I think, borderline like manic kind of thoughts. I realized that if you don't sleep, you don't eat, and you just take Adderall, you go in a weird direction, and it's dangerous. But also what that highlights to me is like, think about what you're microdosing. Think about what the megadose does, and the megadose of Adderall will kill you. So you're taking something that has the potential to end your life, but a little bit of it, just a little bit of that, a little scrape of that. But anyways, as far as the journey goes, I kept taking it. I started working, and I remember I moved back to Florida, did some odd stuff, hang out, and I ran out, and I remember feeling really depressed. And at that time, I wasn't really well read on the medication, what it does, the withdrawal specifics. I just knew, yeah, sometimes I take Adderall. I'm real secretive about it. But it makes me, I could just go, just bang, 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 go. And I liked that. I liked being stimulated. I liked being active. I liked being able to go, 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 go. It was fun. And it felt like it meshed with who naturally I like to go, go, go. And this gave me something to help it along, where I didn't have to self-motivate. I was just ready to go. And it's hard to motivate yourself to go sometimes. But I ran out, I remember, and I was really depressed. And it's like I wasn't able to connect the two. I remember being like, man, not only am I depressed, but I'm out of Adderall. And then I got a job at a summer camp, which is nice. And it was a great place to just reconnect with myself. And I remember I worked on learning to read and do push-ups and socialize. I remember I at that camp connecting and being such a good listener on the medication. Because on the medication, I used people's time with me like a journal that I would just scribble in random ideas. And I wasn't actually listening. I wasn't reading anything. I was thinking that I was so smart and so clever that this person was lucky to have me verbally scribble all over them, and they were entertained. But actually, I think I made them uncomfortable. And it took getting off the medication to realize that, and reading all the journals I wrote that I thought were brilliant at the time, which are now ashes because I burned them all. But yeah, so that was helpful. But then once again, I said I want to get back to work on my movie, and that movie always was a place for me to start using Adderall again. So I started trying to edit the movie again, and I got back on Adderall, and I got distracted majorly with bookbinding, and I was really good at bookbinding. I made my own bookbinding business, and I sold every book I ever made for half of what I probably should have, and I didn't think about scaling or anything, but everyone loved my books. The books were good, and I became a real artisan of them. But yeah, I didn't do my movie. I just did bookbinding. I did bicycle taxi, and I had a job at a preschool as a teacher's assistant. And except for one time, I would never go to preschool on Adderall because I knew that the way it changed my personality was not conducive to being present with children. So I would usually work at the preschool from like lunchtime, like 11 till 3 or something. So I never, except for one time, you can read about it in Hocus Pocus, it's pretty intense, did I ever take the medication in their presence. Because I knew that it made me, it's like I wasn't admitting it, but I was like, yeah, this makes me a little different, and I don't want to expose the kids to that. I wanted to be pure. And then after that, I would take the meds, do bookbinding, work at a restaurant, and do the bicycle taxi, staying up sometimes at 3, 4 in the morning, just an animal, you know? And this all kind of came to a head at some point when I lost my access to them, you know? So I couldn't take them anymore with the same doctor. He was in another state, hadn't seen me in a while. It was a little sketchy. So I didn't have access to them, just cold turkey, ran out. And I remember I called people, I did everything I could to get them. I wasn't ready to withdraw, and I was all alone. And all kinds of stuff. I had built a life. I had used Adderall as scaffolding to build a life that needed Adderall to stay supportive. And without the Adderall, it just started falling apart. And it was bad. I got really depressed, and things started falling apart pretty badly. But I started reading about Adderall. I have a whole bunch of books I started reading just to help me, like Martha Burge, The Adhd Myth, Scattered Minds, Gabor Mate, ADHD Does Not Exist. Yeah, and this one was huge, On Speed. And these books helped me understand, and I would also say, if you want to add to this, Hocus Pocus. But these books helped me understand everything about it. And so when I was withdrawing, if you've watched my channel, I talk about the withdrawal a lot. And of course, the one thing, if this is the only video of mine you watch and you're withdrawing from these medications, that I would say is know that the things that are coming to you, the dark thoughts that come your way when you're withdrawing from these medications are not you. It's just the withdrawal passing. So once I was equipped with that knowledge, I was good to go. Once I knew that when that voice in my head said something to me that was scary, or would say things to me that were hurtful, that it was the withdrawal as an entity using my inner dialogue to get me back on the medication. That's what it was. It had nefarious actions, and I knew it was wrong, and I knew I had to power through it, and I did. So the medication journey, was it over at that point? Well, 6 months after, I did. No, I'm just going to talk about this one medication. So it took a long time, and I did all kinds of things. I did all kinds of herbs. I did plant medicine. I did breath work, doing exercise. It's like I see almost that stuff. It's like when you're in a withdrawal, you're like in the ocean, just drowning. And maybe you need to latch onto some life vest, and maybe that's therapy, or lifesaver, life preserver. Maybe that's therapy. Maybe that's microdosing. Maybe that's herbs. Maybe that's acupuncture. Maybe that's energy work. Maybe that's church on Sunday. Whatever you have to do to get your life together. But I think it's important in the withdrawal, because this is an important part of the journey, is the end, coming home. And the withdrawal, it destroys you. You have, like, at least in my case, and in a lot of the cases of people I've read about, it knocks you out. People lose relationships, jobs, things can fall apart. So in a way, society wants you to stay on these medications. You're a better member of society. I was a better member of society on these medications. And then when I stopped, I was worse. I seemed to be everyone's problem. Before I could handle my stuff, but now I needed help. And I didn't have money. I didn't know what to do. Things were falling apart. But I just knew, like, I don't care at this point, no matter what. I made a full-on commitment, and I noticed that when you make a full-on commitment to something like this, you don't care how long it takes, because you're going to do it anyways. So it's like, is it going to take a year, 2 years, 10 years? Doesn't matter. I'm doing it anyways. So I was just fully committed. And that might be folly. There are some times where I'm like, wow, maybe if I was just like on a small dose of Ritalin that was reasonable, maybe that would have been right. But I was like, no, I have to do no medication, because I have to. If I'm ever dried up on a desert island, I want to be in tip-top shape. It's like the more bumpers, I want to be able to get gutter balls, because then I'll become a better bowler. So even if I have ADHD, even if it makes my life more difficult, and sure it has, I bet if I've been taking medications the past 16 years or 12 years or whatever, however long it's been, 12 years since I take medication, I may have made less career mistakes. I may have made better financial decisions. I may have been in a different place. I might have a better life altogether. But I don't think I'd have my wife and child, if I'm being honest. So I'm grateful for that. But I understand that it's really tempting. It's very hard to turn away from something that gives you the solution, because when I was struggling off the medications, I would get to roadblocks, and I would say, I know that if I had the medications right now, I wouldn't have this particular roadblock. It would be, this is like the one thing I'm struggling with. And I'm like, okay, that's the problem. That's always been the problem. And medication has always been the solution. What can you do? What can you do instead? I joined Kung Fu, Tai Chi. I said, okay, let's roll it all the way back. 7.5 years old. Keep getting out of your seat. Keep talking out of line. I am my own father now. What am I going to do? You're going to learn some martial arts. And my father, he tried to do this, but I was too stubborn. And I was like, listen now. Now's the time. No more. And I would join Kung Fu. And it gave me some discipline, good posture, confidence, self-discipline, denial of what I wanted in a moment, and prolong myself for what I wanted in the future. I traded in my desire for pleasure for a desire for satisfaction. And that's something I try to do. because I know that, like, okay, sure, I can do now, and learn to work hard. I noticed that all the work I had been doing was erratic, frantic, excited. Is that really work if it feels good? Is that really work if you enjoy it? I wanted to do work that was hard. And I realized that the hardest part of hard work is doing it when you're tired, when you can't do it, when you don't feel like doing it, when it's boring. Can I do that? So I challenged myself to learn to do that. That was the end of my medication journey. That was the lesson that I was putting off. And I'm not advocating everyone do what I do. I'm a weird guy. So I'm not saying this is what you should do. But there are people out there who might want to hear this story is all. And there are times that I wish medications would work for me, but after writing this book and having this YouTube channel, I've built up too much accountability, honestly. I can never do medication. But also, I've worked so hard to build a life without it that I wouldn't want to lose that. Because, when I looked back at my journals that I wrote on Adderall, where I thought I was really clever and smart, I said, I've surpassed this. I believe that I have a more mature approach to productivity, to outlook on life, to everything. And I think that maturity came from, there was a day, that was the last day I played with action figures, and I started working in the real world. There was a day when I stopped playing with video games. It's like there's a point when you gotta let training wheels off. And I think Adderall, maybe Adderall did help me develop strategies and patterns that helped me work hard and get things done. But at a certain point, I had to take what I learned, say goodbye, and go through the breakup with Adderall. And there was a lot of grief, and there was a lot of sadness, and there was a lot of pain in letting go of Adderall. Adderall was a dear friend. On Adderall, I would go into my room and sit at my desk, clean everything, and have a blank sheet of paper on my desk with a pen. And it was like, alone at last. And I would write, and it would create, and it would feel good. And I'd read it later, and I'm like, well, this is garbage. But it felt good coming out. And I think now the approach to writing is I sit down, I don't feel like writing, and I write, and I write, and I write, and I come back to it, and I say, maybe this is okay. But that's the truth. So I had to ask myself, would I rather have a satisfying, a pleasurable, a pleasing lie, or would I rather live in the brutal truth? And I choose the brutal truth every day. Everyone has a hierarchy of values in their own selves, power, community, whatever. I don't have the list of values right on my head, but I know that pretty high on my values is truth and authenticity. And I struggled with this. I had an identity crisis. Who am I on Adderall? Who am I off Adderall? And I wanted to live in the truth. Now, I used to have a sort of negative approach to psychiatry. And I still kind of harbor some of those resentments, but I do want to just add a caveat that what I'm talking about is specifically for ADHD and Adderall. This perspective should not be applied to bipolar, anxiety, or whatever. The only medication I've taken is Adderall and Ritalin, and the only condition I've been medicated for is attention deficit disorder. So like these perspectives of like that I was like cheating or something is only for me. So don't take it the wrong way. And I know I come off as anti-med a lot, but people have like read my book and they're like, you're pretty honest and you're pretty fair to the medication for its benefits. And a lot of people have read my book and they've been like, it made me want to do Adderall when you were describing it, because it's a complicated issue. And I'm not just flat out anti-med. I mean, I've done a lot of different substances. And there have been times when I've been grateful to them. And at the moment, I don't do anything. As far as my journey with substances, coffee, matcha, yerba mate, I still like stimulants. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't take anything. But I did a lot. And, I almost feel like I had to do other drugs to work with other drugs, and that's a cycle. Once you bring a cat in your house to get the mouse out, so you gotta get a dog. Oh, you gotta get a dog there. All right, well, I'm rambling. That was pretty much my journey. This is my YouTube channel. I like to have fun here. I like to experiment. I like to keep doing things. So I did this video. If you watch this whole thing and you're here now, first I want to thank you for spending this much time with me. Making this is unnatural to me, talking to a camera instead of a person. But I want you to know I really appreciate listening to me, and I hope this helps you in some ways. And if you want to read my book, you can purchase it for a pretty low price. And if you want to read my book and you can't afford it, send me a message and I'll send you a digital copy or work something out. And if anyone wants to review it, reach out to me and I'll trade you the book for a promise of a review. I really fell in love with writing while making this book. I kind of forgot what it was about, and I just really enjoyed writing it. But that all being said, I'm going to stop talking until I make another video. Hit like and subscribe. Become a member of this community. I don't know. Let me know about your journey with ADHD medications. Was it similar? Was it different? Are you on them right now? Let me know. I would love to hear about it. I'm 12 years off ADHD medications and still thinking about it. So they have a profound effect on our lives. Let me know if I missed anything. I think I covered everything. It's all in here. I mean, it's not too bad. That's an airport. That's a beach read, And I'd like to make other books about other things, but that's everything about that. And I'm making one about how to live med-free, more nonfiction. And I'm writing a novel, and it's all fun. And if you're struggling with ADHD medication anyway, my heart goes out to you. And I know that it's a struggle, and I hope that this video helps you. And the reason I make these videos is because when I was going through that withdrawal, I didn't feel like there was anyone talking about it, and I wanted someone to talk about it. So I try to be what I wish there was, and I hope this helps you. And I'm going to stop talking. Take care. Thanks so much.